Hello and welcome to another webinar at 9.arts. This is how to win a public art commission. So whether you're an artist looking to win your first public art commission, or you're an artist looking to win your next public art commission, you're in the right place. Glad you're joining us today. I am your host for the webinar today. I'm Keith Hitchcock, Digital Content Manager at 9.arts, and I want to introduce one of our special guests today, Molly Casey, Chief Curator and co-founder of 9.arts. Hello, Molly.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Excited.
So we have another special guest who will be joining us later. That's Thomas Detour Evans, artist and author of Be the Artist, the Interactive Guide to a Lasting Art Career. So excited that he's joining us today. I know that I'm going to learn a lot about being an artist and public art commissions, and I hope that you do too. We have a couple other folks that are helping out behind the scenes. Olivia and Christelle will be tossing some information out that hopefully will be added information that will be helpful for you, links and such, as well as answering some questions that maybe we won't be able to get to along the way. So here's what we're hoping that you will walk away with today. These are the primary things: the benefits of working with an art consultant, where to find those opportunities, best practices for creating a really awesome proposal, and some other general tips about how to market your art business. It's a pretty simple agenda today, and Molly's going to kick it off after a few more introductory words. We will have time for a Q&A later on, so feel free at any time to tap that question, that Q&A button, and plop your question in there, whatever it is, and we'll get to as many of these as we can when we get to that Q&A. We have so much material that we want to cover. We've actually preemptively decided that we're going to do 60 minutes today rather than what we build this webinar at, which was 45 minutes. So if you do need to leave at that 45-minute mark, no problem. We are making a video recording of this, and we will make that available to you. We'll follow up with an email. You'll probably also be able to find it on our YouTube page. So look for that. At this time, I want to hand it over to Molly to take us to the next section, which is all about starting with who we are as a company, 9.arts. So take it away, Molly.
Thank you, Keith. So I wanted to first just go ahead, and for those of you who don't know 9.arts, we are an art consulting and creative placemaking firm. We work across tons of different verticals and industries, both public and private. Multifamily, healthcare, corporate office, municipalities. Probably if you can name one of those, we've probably worked on one. We're headquartered out of Denver, but we do have a Seattle location and quite a big presence in the Southeast as well. And we work all over the world. So to date, we're projects in over 36 states and 5 countries, and continuing to grow our presence all over the place. And in addition to all that, we have this artist database that we've put together, .folioart.com, which many of you know. And it's a great place for us to start a lot of our research when we are going out and starting to find the right artwork for each project that we work on. So I'll go into a little more detail on that in a little bit. But first, we can go ahead and talk a little bit more about collaboration between artists and consultants. So, why work with a consultant? Is it always is a question that I think everyone should ask themselves as an artist. And a few points I just want to bring to the forefront here. First of all, we can be your liaison between the client and between you and the client. So we can help to represent you, your artwork, your vision, your proposal, all of that, while you can stay and focus on creating work, and you don't have to worry so much about managing all those art logistics and speaking the lingo of the corporate real estate world, which can be quite different than the creative world. We can help sell your work. And a big thing that we can help with as well is just increasing your exposure by placing your artwork in highly trafficked public spaces. And also paying you for it, because that's hugely important. We don't want to ever make anyone sell their artwork at a price that feels unfair, and we would never ask you to have artwork on loan. And then lastly, one other reason is that we really want to support emerging artists and artists who are underrepresented, and we can help walk you through the process of a public art proposal and creating one of those pieces, and help you like learn how to do it so you can get your first public art piece, and then you can go out for more public calls and have something to show that you have experience in that arena. So definitely something of a benefit to working with 9.Arts specifically, and having that collaboration. One of the ways that we find artists is through Dotfolio. So the benefits of signing up for Dotfolio, first of all, it's totally free. There's no money involved at all for you to put your artwork up there. And it really helps sell your work. So one of the places we go first when we're working, especially in a new area of the United States specifically, is into Dotfolio to see what's going on in that arena, who are some artists that are already there, and start to get a lay of the land. Now, just understand that just because you're in Dotfolio doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily be selected immediately for something, or that you might hear from us within a month and we're ready to purchase something. You might not hear from us for a year, and that's simply because we are always out looking for the right fit for our client's vision. And sometimes that means that certain art is a good fit and certain art isn't. So it's not even necessarily about what's trending. It's very, very project and site specific. But know too that as a participant on Dotfolio, you are being seen, you are being tracked and noted in there, and that our team is checking that regularly. But also it's a great resource for artists because you basically have an online platform where you can organize your entire portfolio, and there's no cost to you to do that. So it's a great way for you to track how much your art is, what sizing it is, where it is in the world, if it's sold, if it's not. So just a good one-stop shop for a quick view of your portfolio. All right, so now that we've got some of those fun things out of the way, let's talk about the public art proposal development. I'd like to go ahead and bring in our artist expert. I'm sure you've probably heard of Thomas Evans, aka Detour. He is an all-around creative, specializing in large-scale public art, interactive visuals, portraiture, immersive spaces. Sorry, we're gonna have some dog interruptions occasionally since I'm calling in from home. And he's working in Denver. His focus is to create work where art and innovation meet. A born collaborator and a military brat, Detour pulls from every conceivable experience that shapes his landscapes and perspectives. Explaining Detour's work is no easy task, as ongoing experimentations in visual art, music, and interactive technologies have his practice continually expanding. With his ever-evolving approach to art, Detour's focus is on expanding customary views of creativity and challenging fine art paradigms by mixing traditional mediums with new approaches, all the while opening up the creative process from that of a singular artist to one that thrives on multi-layered collaboration and viewer participation. So with that, Detour, welcome. Where have you been over the last few months? What have you been up to?
Oh, traveling a lot. Thanks for having me. But yeah, it's like I just finished up a couple of projects in Houston and Columbus, Georgia. So nothing but traveling before the holidays.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's just start with the basics.
Yeah.
What's the difference between an RFP, an RFQ, and an artist invitational?
I guess in my practice, it's almost half and half when it comes to artist invitationals and sort of these RFPs, RFQs. So like artist invitational is where an organization, an entity, or brand will come to me and say, we want to invite you to this opportunity that we have, and we want you specifically. And that's where it's like they just need a proposal or a mock-up of an idea, which is like great for me because I don't have to sort of go through the whole sort of application process. But the other half of my practice is really just, RFQs and RFPs, where RFQs, request for qualification, is where I get, where I do a lot of work, legwork, when it comes to like my daily tasks behind the computer, is like going to a lot of these websites and applying for these art calls where they just are looking for, they have an opportunity and they just want to see what artists are qualified. So it's like you're submitting your qualifications to that project, to where it's like, this is my portfolio, this is the work I've done in the past, this is something where it's like, I would love to sort of be a part of this opportunity. But you're not doing a full-on proposal, you're not designing anything. Then, if you get selected from that artist qualification, then it's like an RFP. So like you're requesting a proposal. Then it comes to, now you're actually having to look deep into that opportunity that they have. And now you're actually having to break down, okay, what artwork that I do would look good in this space? What's the budget look like? What's all these other things would apply for, would work well for this opportunity? So now it's like you're fleshing out those ideas. And that's a lot more involved. And a lot of times with the RFQ, you're not getting paid for anything, but with the RFP, that's when it comes to, okay, now they selected 5 artists and now they're paying you for those ideas, because a lot of times these RFPs will take a long time, probably a couple of days, for you to sort of really flesh out those ideas, put that on paper. But it's a lot of work because there's a lot of research and things that go involved when it comes to trying to get a committee of people to say yes to your work.
So then tell us about where you find opportunities, because obviously with an artist invitational, those are coming to you. But if you're going out and you're looking for the first time for some of these opportunities, what are some of the places you'd like to go? What are your faves?
Yeah, so like when I first started out looking for artist calls, I went to Cafe. And Cafe was like one of those places where a lot of artists kind of know about, and a lot of municipalities have to sort of post their work or post their opportunity on that website. So Cafe, I think that's at the top, is one of the main places that I go to. But also Coda Works I go to, Art Deadline I go to as well, because they also have grants and residencies that I look at. But the other place that I really find a lot of projects that I apply for is Public Artists. And mainly because when I set up an account with them, they send out emails when it comes to what projects are coming up or what has been listed, but also what is about to hit that deadline. So a lot of times it's like I'll frequent a lot of these websites, once a week, just to see what projects are out there. But that is like the place to start, is like looking at these websites and seeing exactly, what organizations or cities are posting what opportunities, and they all have budgets, they all have the description. So you can go through and see which one kind of fits you.
And so when it comes to actually marketing yourself as an artist for these commissions and proposals, like, how do you do that? What are your thoughts on like how to market yourself?
Really, it's just all about putting yourself out there. And for me, whenever I do a project, so like this last project that I did in Columbus, Georgia, and when I did in Houston, I'll put out the progress shots, or I'll put out, the end shots. It's just like tell the story of like me actually doing the project. And a lot of times that garners a lot of invitation when it comes to people saying, oh, this artist is actually doing a recent project and I love that project. Let me see if this artist can actually do a project for me or my company or my business or, my city, things like that. And also too, I think we mentioned this before, is actually just saying that you're open for commission on your Instagram or on your TikTok or on your website. A lot of those things really help out when it comes to, these individuals that will be those decision makers or be the ones that actually try to put together these projects. Sometimes they follow you, they come across your account and it says, oh, open for commission, or, oh, this artist just completed a project. Now they're thinking, oh, we should ask this artist if they would love to sort of be a part of this project that I want to put together.
That is so helpful. I think you're right. Just putting yourself out there, but also just telling the public, like telling people, hey, I will do a commission, because
Yeah.
you know, people don't want to ever make the assumption that you want to do commissions because not all artists do. So that's great to know. Well, let's keep moving on and talk about the elements of a proposal. So what are the most important things that you need to do to create a proposal? What are the things you cannot leave out?
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, I have like a Google Drive folder where I have a ton of the applications that I did in the past, and they all are very, very much so similar. So like a lot of things that sort of gel together are things like the cover letter, the table of contents, the portfolio pieces that I'll add to, you know, all of these different applications, because a lot of the ones I apply for are kind of similar. You know, the artist statements are sometimes similar, and then like the CV is always similar. But where it comes to like the meat of the actual proposal that I really, really focus on is sort of like when it gets to the written and the visual narrative of like the mock-up or the idea that you want to propose. That's where you're really trying to figure out, you know, exactly how to connect with the committee, how to get people in the community to sort of really buy into your idea, because everything that we do is very abstract and we have in our head this idea and like this is what I want to see in the space, this is what I think would be great. But to figure out a way of taking that out of your head and sort of visualizing it on paper in like a Zoom presentation or in-person presentation, and then figure out exactly how do I get them to see this as something that can be real for the space that they want to have artwork in. So that right there is one of the most important parts, because, you know, I've been on a lot of these committees where it's kind of like, you know, everything else seems pretty much, you know, the same when it comes to the cover letter and portfolio of, you know, all the applicants. But when it comes to those visuals of that idea, that's when things start to separate. You really start to dive into one artist versus another artist. So really focusing on that is important. And then the other parts are really just like the timelines and budgets are really big, because they want to know exactly that you can do this idea within the given amount of funding that you have. And that's got to be like a big part of just like making sure that the committee knows that you can actually complete this project. And, you know, other things like logistics, you know, do you need electrical? Do you need to actually, what does installation look like? What does the fabrication look like? What does all these different pieces to your piece kind of look like for that space? So logistical needs are really big. Then potential partners as well. You know, who are your fabricators? Who are the individuals that will be involved in your project? So a lot of times when you have all these details in your proposal really fleshed out and hammered out, you know, it gives a sense of security, or just like a sense of ease to a lot of the people on the committee, knowing that, hey, this project can actually get done by this artist. Because if, you know, if they have, you know, blanks or you have gaps in there, there's going to be a lot of questions from the committee. There's going to be a lot of, you know, if, ands, or buts from the committee. So you want to make sure that you make it concrete that this is how it's going to go. I've fleshed out everything that needs to be fleshed out, and I can get this project done.
Great. Yeah, that's so helpful. And boy, do I love small art committees. Gets it's the 20 plus
Yeah,
people that always I'm like, oh, that's a tough one, but it, you know, give them as
yeah,
much
yeah.
information as possible.
Yeah, really, it's all about making, like, put yourself in the mindset of someone on a committee. So like, you know, they're looking to find an artist that, you know, can get the project done, but also has great work. So like trying to figure out ways to fill in the gap of saying, hey, I'm the artist that you want because I make great work, but I'm also the artist that you want because everything is sort of dialed in when it comes to how the beginning, the middle, and the ending of how this project is going to look, from planning stages to installation stages to all, you know, maintenance, thinking about anything and everything in between. And then when you sort of give them that sense of ease, it's easier for them to say yes, because that's really what you want them to do, is just to say yes. And a lot of times these, like I said, like I have a Google Drive folder that will have a template sort of proposal that I have, and it has a lot of the same things, but a lot of stuff will change when it comes to like the actual sort of the narrative or the mock-up, and then sometimes a lot of times the timeline and budget. But a lot of times it's like some stuff will change, some stuff will stay the same. So that's how I make it easy for me when it comes to doing this part of, like, you know, public art projects, is like the proposals. Like that's how I sort of get a lot of proposals done.
That's a great tip. Have the standard stuff already done and ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in a little bit further then, since that's sort of high level, and talk more about key considerations. So, like, let's talk, because this one to me is the most important thing that we look for in when we're going out for RFQ, or artist invitationals, is telling that compelling story. What do you mean by that? Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really all about, like marketing yourself, marketing your idea, sort of like separating yourself from everyone else who applied. And that's really just all about like doing the research in terms of that opportunity, that space, the background of the organization or the entity of the city, sort of like, you know, providing that opportunity, providing that artist call, and sort of seeing different places where you can sort of use your background, your expertise to connect with that space. And that intersection is where you're going to really have a lot of success if you sort of live in that sort of space where it's kind of like, this is the opportunity for this space, and this is why my work relates to that space. This is why I relate to that space, and this is, why I make certain decisions that I made for the materials or sourcing or anything and everything when it comes to the whys behind your idea. So when they look at your proposal and they're looking at the visual and they're looking at the mock-up, they want to know, why is this important to them? Why is this important to the space? Why is this important to their end goals? Did you think about the stakeholders in the area? Did you think about 10 years from now how this will feel with the community? So a lot of times, like telling that story about your idea, telling that story about why this is important and why your idea is sort of tailor-made for that space, is really what you're trying to do when you're creating that proposal, mainly because that's what's really going to connect. Because you can make a lot of things look beautiful, you can make a lot of things look pretty, but a lot of times, like the things that really connect with people on the committee are the things that really have sort of like this are anchored in a lot of like meaningful whys. Like I said, like, why is this important to me? So telling a compelling story is super, super important. You can do that many ways, of like doing the visuals, doing mock-ups, doing like actual sort of armatures and sort of like these little miniaturettes. And really it's like figuring out, how do I tell that story? And it's gonna I guess span or take the entire spectrum of how you can do that. But figuring out how you can do that in a presentation is like, should be one of your main goals of doing that. And that really gets into like I said, materials, as well as like where you're sourcing your stuff. But other things to consider when it comes to your proposals, like, because I do a lot of murals, like my materials are going to be important when it comes to, what materials I use. Climate is going to be another thing, because, it's, painting here is different than painting in Miami this time of year, right? So it's like, if I'm in Miami,
Very
it's like,
different.
yeah, it's very different. So like I have to postpone projects. So like that's gonna change my timeline on a lot of stuff. The location of where you're painting, the interior versus the exterior, all these different things will sort of have be a factor in terms of what you put in your proposal, and how you will shape your logistics, how you will shape your partners, how you will shape timelines, things like that. So you really want to be prepared to take in all factors and
Mhm.
adjust for that. And it's like, have a plan B as well, because I think sometimes committees like that, when you sort of say, this is what my dream proposal is, or like what I want it to be, but this is also where the climate may change, the location may change, the materials may change, like inflation's happening, so materials will definitely change for me and my current projects. So all these different little things you want to make sure you consider whenever you're sort of putting into a proposal. And the committees like that, when you're sort of thinking about things, so that they know that you're taking it serious.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to build trust with the committee. Well, let's talk about some general tips too, because you have some really great ones, and I'd love if you could just walk through some of these, and specifically thinking about the long term.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is just really just jump in. I think a lot of people are intimidated about public art and applying for these projects, because it's bigger project. It's like a bigger project with bigger budgets and bigger timelines, and sometimes you think you're not capable of doing it, but a lot of times it's like you are, and sometimes it's just like starting small. So like my first ever public art project was someone who owned this building or this co-working space called Industry, and she wanted me to actually add like this little small sculpture I had for a project for when I was at another sort of art residency, and she liked it and she wanted me to put it in there, so I put it in there. And then my next public art project for this, like I did for the city, was a really small one. It was just basically a 3x4 portrait of this individual named Carla Madison, who was a city council person. And that project right there, that's when like I got my feet wet. It was something that I was familiar with doing portraits, but it was sort of like doing it in a public space through, the city. I had to learn about things like, general liability insurance. I actually had, yeah. So it's like all these different things that you don't think about that now you have to sort of go into in terms of like contracts and timelines and when you get paid, cash flow. So that really was like a big sort of hurdle for me, but it was a smaller budget, $20,000. But it was basically, I was able to dive in deep into, how does this public art thing go on this smaller scale? But that I use for the next public art call. So it's like when you're looking to get into the space, it's like looking for those small projects to sort of, be a stepping stone for bigger projects. But the first thing is just to get in, because I didn't think I was going to get the call to sort of do, because it was an RFQ, and then it was like I didn't think I was going to get the opportunity to do a presentation for the call. They called me back and said, "Hey, we love your qualifications. Would you do a presentation?" That was the first time I did a public art presentation, and basically it was sort of like learning on the fly. But it's like it gave me the experience to do larger projects. So just jump in with those smaller projects and just start to grow as much as you can, because you never know who's on the committee. You never know who else is applying, because it could be that not a lot of artists saw that call. So like you're one of 5 versus one of 100. So really just apply for these calls as much as you can, and being I guess honest about what you can do and can deliver. Like just don't overpromise and underdeliver.
Do that.
Because it's like you want to underpromise and overdeliver as much as you can. So be reasonable. And one big thing is like get your budget is key. So like making sure that you're planning for any and every thing that can happen, having a contingency when it comes to these projects. And for me, it was like when I got in, it's like focusing on not getting rich with these projects, because for me it was more about getting my artwork in the public and making sure that I can sort of have a portfolio to use on that next project. So I didn't really think about the I guess the financial gain to it. It was more, as long as I make sure that I'm able to have a project that I can use for the next one, and then that's when the financial starts to come in. But don't think you're going to get super rich off of like these projects that are $500,000 or $100,000. A lot of times that goes to fabricators and insurance and other stuff. So that's why budget is really key to making sure that you have that thing sort of squared away. And one of the last things, like ask questions. That's really big, because you don't know what you don't know. So asking questions can be huge when it comes to finding out small details about a project that can sort of get you the project or not get you the project. So for me, it's sort of like making sure that I showcase that I'm also really interested in a project by making sure that I know everything about it. So really, as much as you can, ask questions.
I think that's so key. And plus there's so much that, like, when I'm putting together RFPs or even artist invitationals, there's stuff that I might forget to include, or that that the artist is like thinks might be really important that maybe we didn't think was going to be as important to them. So asking questions, it's encouraged. Absolutely. Like, don't be afraid
I mean,
to
like
ask
for me, because I do murals, like sometimes people don't realize the way the wall is facing can be really important for me. So like, is the wall facing east? Is it facing west? Is it facing north? Is it facing south? Because they'll get different amounts of sun depending on the way it's facing, which for me is important to know, because then I'm like, okay, now I know I have to have a protective clear coat or UV clear coat when it comes to this space. All these different things really matter. And sometimes these people in committee that will sort of put together the projects, they don't know you, they don't know sometimes how you work or the things that are important to your process. So sometimes asking these questions can really open up more details.
Well, let's jump in and actually look at your most recent winning proposal. I think this is really exciting, and I think it'll be really helpful to give a concrete example here and actually look through this. So this is the proposal for Denver International Airport that Detour just won. And yeah, I think let's go ahead and check it out. This is I mean, this is the one that you presented, and this deck was super visual. And I know it was you can turn it into a PDF. It was originally in a Keynote, but you can do PowerPoint as well, which is nice and flexible. But talk us through why you presented the proposal in this way, and give us sort of a behind the scenes of what you did on each of these pages coming up.
Yeah, so I mean, this proposal or this artist call was like one I didn't think I was going to get. And I basically, this is around the time when I hired someone to actually do all these applications for me, to sort of take time off of my hands, this work off of my hands. And she said, let's apply for this artist call. And it was basically a $450,000 budget to have this, or have like a suspended sculpture or art piece in DIA in Concourse B East. And like I said, like I didn't know I was going to get it at all, but they said, hey, you're on the short list. And this is why I say just jump into all these artist calls, because you just never know who's on the committee. And a lot of people knew of my work on the committee. They never seen me do 3D art at all, but they were like, let's take a chance on Detour and everything. So that's so how that's kind of started. But you know, like I said, when you're first starting out doing these proposals, like one of the biggest things to really focus on is like the storytelling. And like the first slide out the deck, I really wanted to tell the story of like how I sort of came to the idea that I came to. So it's talking about my upbringing when it comes to being a military brat, like showing me in Fort Lee, Virginia as a kid, showing me in high school in Ramstein, Germany, where I lived for a while, showing me in airports, you know, because I know airports, I rode on, you know, cargo planes, I rode on Cessnas, I always ride commercial all the time now. So it's like, I know airports, I know what's good. I know exactly, you know, what I stop at when it comes to public art. And then I told them, like, I went through a ton of different ideas. So I showed them me sketching. I was like, there's some of my early sketches when it comes to like the ideas of what I was thinking about, like an exploding suitcase and all these different items. And, you know, it was like,
The process.
all these different, the process.
I love that you showed the process. That's really cool.
Yeah, they really liked it. They were really like the idea of like showcasing like what I go through when it comes to trying to figure out what looks good and what doesn't look good. And like I said, the whys behind the decision making, and like, okay, why is he going towards suitcases versus something else? And then and then showing them like this, like the top right is like the sketch I did for what would become like the idea that I would sort of the direction that I would go towards. And for me, it was kind of like, you know, I'm great when it comes to sometimes 2D work, but it was very difficult to figure out how do I sort of communicate my idea when it comes to the 3D realm. So like, I'm a muralist, I do drawings, I do paintings, but I rarely do a lot of sculpture work. And getting into sculpture work is kind of like, how do I communicate that idea? So that's when I had to learn how to do 3D modeling. So I spent a good 3 months three months of my life learning Blender, which is like a program I think a lot of artists should learn, and it's free. So I learned Blender. I learned how to, you know, model exactly what I needed to do. And I also enlisted a friend, Michael Sperandeo, to actually take my 3D model and put into this virtual space to sort of have this sort of real-time visual that I could walk around, like a little avatar I could walk around and showcase to the committee exactly what my idea would look like in DIA, with people around it, people walking under it, people walking beside it, things like that. So that's basically sort of like the start of like this proposal, was really just like showcasing exactly the whys behind it. Yeah. So
is
like,
this the one you built in Blender?
Yeah, so this is what I built in Blender.
Wow.
You can there's like I see like now that I know Blender, it's like I see a lot of mistakes with it, but this is basically like what I was like, this is my idea and this is how I can showcase it, you know, visually without sort of like I guess giving too much to the imagination. It's kind of like this is what I want it to be. So now the people on the committee can be like, oh, this is exactly what he's talking about. It's not something to where it's like I have to imagine it going from 2D to 3D. It's already 3D, and this is exactly what it will look like. So yeah, so basically it is a sort of like this infinity shaped sculpture. So when you far away from it, because really they wanted something that would be like a wayfinder at the end of the terminal where they're expanding it, that people could point to and say, this is the direction towards your gate. So, this is great when it comes to far away, individuals seeing it far away, and then up close, it turns to from an infinity symbol more into like this looping shape to where, it's like it sort of borrows from the idea of 24-hour nature where it loops, but also the motion when it comes to takeoff and landing for airplanes. So
Wow.
really, like when they during the walkthrough at DIA, they kept talking about the 24-hour nature of airports and they're never closed. Uh, because I think since almost like the invention of commercial flights, it's like there's always been a plane in the sky. So there's always something happening in the sky. So that's something that I really wanted to sort of connect with. And then like having luggage was the idea of like connecting every passenger, whether you're 12, whether you're 6, whether you're 25, 35, 85, it's something that you all relate to. And then with the colors, I wanted it to sort of borrow from the idea of having sort of like the sunrise, sunset sort of feel, because DIA or Colorado, we have the most sun out of like any other state. So I wanted to really like hone in on like those colors, and then the dimension of it is like, I wanted it to be as big as possible and feel big as possible as well. So I wanted something that would be big and bold. But like I said, like I had to learn Blender and 3D modeling and sort of enlist people to actually bring this idea together
Well,
to sort of, make it visual.
I think the way that you
But
put the proposal together is really nice because you start off with like the process of how what the why, and then for the committee to see then like, okay, cool, here's this, like, here's the visual representation. I really can understand what he's trying to do. And now you're really getting into the details so that now they can actually put like some reality around what they're looking at. Like the why behind every little choice, how large they can start to imagine it in person when you start to give all of this additional detail. This is one of my favorite slides. So I want you to talk
yeah,
about the piece in the lower left corner because this is just
yeah.
great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like with the colors, I wanted to showcase like the sunrise and sunset of Colorado. So that's sort of like why I added like the right side of that slide to be like a picture of like Colorado sunset, and then having like these color spectrum, and then wanting to really like dive into like you were saying, like making sure it's like it's doable and like it's like in front of them from the beginning when they're looking at the proposal. That's why I built this sort of little miniature maquette of the actual piece with actual luggage that I would probably use in the actual sculpture. So that way they're not only seeing the 3D renderings saying, oh, this is actually, what he's talking about, but then like seeing this picture. And I did a video of a walk around of this sort of little miniaturette to where they can say, oh, this is actually how a section of it will look with suspended pieces around it and the color sort of like steps in between each color. And that really, really, for me, sort of, helped out when it became, how do I make it alive to them? How do I sort of bring it in front of them and say, oh, this is exactly what it will look like? This is no sort of imagination. This is not, AI 3D rendering, FX, visual effects. This is like what it will really look like. And that's something that I think really helped out when it came to them saying yes to this and saying yes to me, because I built a smaller version of it. Be it, it's not the most safe one, but like once I get the fabricators involved, that's when they'll be like, okay, this is actually something that can actually happen. But yeah, so like talking more about the why is like talking about the luggage and how all the luggage will be sort of sourced from Colorado. So it's not just having random items sort of molded and casted. It's like actual found objects and objects donated to me that will be a part of the piece. I think that really honed in on connecting them with the piece because they knew that community elements of the community will be involved with the sculpture, which was very different than everything else that they had in DIA and just different than a lot of other public art projects. And then talking about the fabrication, how we're going to go about sort of like coating the piece and the type of coloring or colors and like the materials that we sort of thought about when it came to the longevity of the actual work because it is found sort of objects and pieces. So how do we sort of make this thing last for 30, 40, 50 years was like a big concern. But because I thought about that at the beginning when it came to the different elements and different materials I was going to use, that gave them more assurance that this artist is thinking about the beginning, middle, and ending and post when it comes to this art project. So really it's just like trying to think of anything and everything that the committee had concerns about because the visuals is one thing, but how you're going to put it together is something totally different.
Yeah, well, let's hop down. I know this video, this is just still from the really amazing video, and it's in
Yeah.
our chat right now. So if anyone wants to click on that, you can, and you can watch it. But I think this is huge too, and people make maquettes sometimes to show scale and dimension. And I think that this is probably, I mean, this shows you just going above and beyond. But I think what I'd love to do is to hop to the next slide actually and talk a little bit about budget.
Yeah.
Because this is one thing, like this is an amazing budget. It's thinking about everything, but I think it'd be really helpful for you to talk a little bit about, the fact that you've never made a sculpture, a hanging sculpture. You are more of a mural artist, and how you decided to how you were able to put together a budget with not having all of that knowledge,
Yeah.
and also who you decided to partner with. Like, how did you figure that out?
Yeah, so at the beginning of this project, I partnered with an individual, Mary Valdez, who does a lot of my artist calls for me and applies to different things, but also will look to team me up with fabricators and other partners for artist calls to help me out because a lot of times you get into this catch-22 to where they want you to apply and you apply, but you don't have the experience and they need to look for the experience because they need a request for qualifications. And I'm like, I'm not qualified, but I want this experience to gain for other stuff. But it's like, you get into this thing where it's kind of like, you never really get seen because you just don't have the experience.
Yeah.
So that's why Mary teamed me up from the beginning with a fabricator called Demerge, and they're sort of a full service fabricator, installator. They maintain the work, all these different sort of services. So they were ones where it's kind of like I can bring them in at the beginning and actually talk to them about my idea. And they would be like, hey, this is a great idea, or you need to probably use this material or that material to sort of fit within the budget. So they were helping me along the way when it came to making sure that my idea was feasible. But the budget, when it came to the budget, a lot of the sort of like the artist design fee, the artist consulting fee, pretty much was something that I sort of like would sort of allocate and things that I thought would be good. And then when it came to a lot of the design and the production and installation of it, that's where Demerge came in when it came to figuring out how much each of these line items would cost. So like the polyurea coating or the materials coat or the materials paint labor, all these different things was sort of estimated by Demerge, and then everything else was sort of estimated by me at the end of the day. So really, it was like trying to figure out exactly how to fit this all within $450,000, and figure out, where we could sort of cut some stuff, where we would think, maybe this may be a bigger portion down the line. So all these different numbers that I'll put down they all change. Like the committee knows that, all these numbers will change at the end of the day. So like my artist
Fluid.
review is going to change. Yeah,
Those
everything
things
is
are going to
fluid.
move around, but at least you've got an
Yes.
idea going in so that they know that you can actually do this within the budget. Because the last thing you want to do is go back to the committee when you're like in contract and
Yeah.
say, oh, I can't do it actually. It's going to cost more.
Yeah. So like even having like a lot of things, a lot of times artists don't have like a contingency in there. Like I started putting a contingency in there like probably 4 years ago. When I started running into things where it's kind of like, oh, this actually costs more, or this costs change. So like a contingency is basically like if something goes left and something happens, this is a way of like having extra that you allocated in the budget just for those problems at the end of the day. Because having a project postponed can also cost a lot. So having a contingency, I think, is really big. Making sure your artist, like my artist fee for public art projects, because I said don't think about getting rich, is between like I always try to do like 10 to 15, maybe 20%, but that's kind of like the range that I look at. And sometimes it may be less, sometimes it may be more, but a lot of times with these larger public art projects, that's what it will be, because I'm not a welder, I'm not a fabricator, I don't have a big studio for that stuff, so I always have to outsource. So a lot of times the budget will go towards outsourcing a lot of these different things to individuals that will perform the fabrication, the metalworking, the sewing, or whatever, the installations, the transportation, all that stuff for me. So that's where a bulk of the cost will go. And then you got to think about insurance as well. So like making sure you allocate for insurance, because I had to jack up my insurance when it comes to projects like this, where it's like I got to get professional liability insurance, I got to get this insurance, and a lot of times now it's like I was able to work it out to where it's like I'm able to ride on another sort of partner's insurance for this project, so I don't have to sort of put that on my insurance. So all these different things you get into when you're working on a project like this, but you don't know until you get into it. That's why I'm like, you really have to just dive into it to sort of learn all these different things that come up that you don't even know about. But like I said, the budget is really important, because that's where, especially with the bigger projects, like you really have to be a lot more detailed, because $50,000 can easily balloon to $70,000 if you're not thinking about it correctly. So budget is really, really important.
Well, and I think too, just before we get into Q&A, I just want to put out there for everyone, one, if you are looking for fabricators and partners in that arena up front, CodaWorks has quite a few of those folks listed on their website. They're all over the country. So I think that this is huge, though. This is showing that you can be an artist that is moving into public art in a totally new way and be able to successfully win when you've got the right partners with you and you're thinking about everything up front. So Detour, this is like amazing and very exciting to share. But I'll hand it over to Keith.
Yeah, well, I think judging from the questions coming in and the questions that were submitted at the time of registration, there's a lot of excitement around this, and I know that a lot of people are learning a lot, and they have questions. So we've actually we've selected a lot of questions that we're seeing some recurring themes in, and I'm going to ask those that were submitted by registrants, and some questions coming in. So I'm just going to pile them all into the Q&A, and we'll get to as many of these as we can. And here we go, starting with this. It's how long is the RFP application generally open, and what time should I budget to create my proposal?
Well, I'll take just the first part of that, because I can't budget proposal time, but I can tell you that a lot of times it'll be like anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks on the artist invitationals that we're working on. For public ones, they can be longer, but Detour, if you want to go ahead and speak to your experience too, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's like you'll get like a month or two to sort of like see an artist call go up, and then basically, or a proposal, and then basically it's kind of like, really, I like to do mine early, so I take the entire sort of 6 weeks, or 4 weeks to put it together, where it's kind of like at the beginning, I'm vomiting ideas, I'm vomiting research, all this other stuff. And then, it's like I take a week off and then I really come back to it and say, okay, what really worked, what resonated with me on these ideas for this proposal. And things will change throughout the course of that, especially when I'm doing research on the actual sort of project. So I'd say probably spend at least 2 to 3 hours a day when you're sort of spending on trying to write the proposal to sort of really flush it out. I spend, sometimes an entire day just working on 2 or 3 proposals. And those are the proposals that I really, really want to get. And some proposals kind of like it's a shotgun approach where I'm just throwing stuff out there. And some stuff where it's like the DIA thing, it's kind of like I will spend a lot of time sort of really flushing things out. Like that proposal, a lot of times with the RFP, they will give you a stipend between 5,000 to maybe a couple thousand for really big projects. So like the DIA one they gave me $2,000 to do that proposal, all the applicants, and there was like 4 other applicants for that, or presenters for that one. But I spent $2,500 on the proposal, so extra 500 just getting 3 models sort of created and things like that. You're not going to do that for everyone. That was like a special case. But for a lot of times, it's kind of like these proposals, like I'll have something like a template already set up to where it's like I can just plug and play all these different things. I can sort of change this paragraph to this paragraph, and then I can take this mock up and file and sort of like change this sort of picture I took of the building and then add that image on top of that. So really, it's just like once you get into it, it's like it starts to become really streamlined with your process. But the first thing is really just getting into doing proposals.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, next question. I have 10 years of experience showing my work in galleries, but I don't have a public art portfolio. How do I build this and get started in public art when I don't have work samples to show? It feels like a catch-22.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, it's like when you're going into college or you're getting out of high school, right? And you're like, I need credit, and everyone's like, well, you don't have any credit, so we can't give you credit. So it's I think that one, it's about the way that you present the work that you already have, like showing that like, oh, I have this. Let's say I have this piece, but I'd like to realize it in a public art capacity, and having maybe some ideas that you've already mocked up for potential projects so that they can see that you want to make the leap from point A to point B. So it takes a little more work on the front end to show some of those ideas about how you might translate your current body of work into public art. But a big part of it, like Thomas said, is just putting yourself out there and being able to really hone in and tell that story and represent what you're trying to do in the public art realm, and partnering. Like that's the key to getting those first ones, is showing that you have the right partners that'll help you realize it, that are already experienced in the public art realm. So in this case, Thomas has been with Demiurge, and people know them, trust them. And so it's like, it's an easy thing for people to sign off on. Do you have anything to add to that, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's difficult because I didn't really do a ton of public art stuff until like I started doing those smaller stuff. It was like those smaller projects you kind of focus on. I think nowadays, like there's a lot of cities that are actually looking for artists that don't have experience in public art. I think right now, currently in Colorado, Aurora, it was one of those cities that were putting out calls specifically for artists that did not have experience. So really looking out for some of those sort of opportunities to sort of get that first experience. But a lot of times too, it's like self-initiating projects. So like sometimes I will go out and I'll do a big project, or I'll think of a big public art project that I have to figure out how to fund it, but once it's done, I can use that on a portfolio. So sometimes asking a local business, hey, can I use your space to put in a sculpture piece that I created? Sometimes that can be a good stepping stone. It's a small one, but it's a good enough one to where it's like you can put that on a portfolio to sort of get a slightly larger project. But it's really just like trying to build that experience.
Okay. Next question. Have you ever approached a public entity with a project proposal of your own?
Yes. I mean, I do a lot of that with the city.
Mm.
So it's easy to sort of go, I wouldn't say it's easy, well, depends on where you are. So, with cities, it's like usually they'll have an arts and cultural department or something of that sort. And sometimes it's like talking to them to say, hey, I would love to do a public art project in this space right here, or I would love to paint on this city wall or a retaining wall or whatever. I would love to sort of paint this sidewalk and sort of talking to them about a project like that. So sometimes I will definitely do that, but I do a lot more for just random businesses and brands because it's a little bit easier with doing it with brands. So like I did that with Red Bull for my last show. So like initiating a project by having a proposal ready in your hand and figuring out the best entity to go to sort of make it come to life. And usually it's those brands or businesses where it's like there's synergy, there's like a trade-off for them to where it's like they gain from activating your project as well. So I'll do a lot of that more so than getting artist calls from a lot of these websites. It's like that's where a lot of my projects come from, is like self-activation.
Great. Okay, next one. As someone who has sat on boards for calls, do you find that million-dollar words and lengthy writing is helpful or hurtful?
Hurtful. I mean, I have to read a lot of proposals, quite a few, and I mean, I'm doing that constantly, and I think it's very helpful to have your, like, kind of the way that Detour outlined things, where like you can have, and he was able to present his proposal in person. That's not always possible. So I think when you have like a nice summary of your idea, and then you have bullet points with the visuals next to it, very similar to how you laid things out, Thomas. I mean, the only thing I would do differently is if that were a PDF being passed around to a committee and they never got to speak to you, you would have some sort of a narrative in there explaining your process, as opposed to you being able to do that in person. But like long essays, people don't read anymore anyway, which is terrible in and of itself. But like, it's a visual, like, people need more visuals than anything, especially because the committees, a lot of folks on them, they cannot visualize the way that you can as an artist. They can't see what that is, and they definitely won't understand it if you're just using words to describe it. The more visuals, the more information that you can give with the least amount of words, I think, is actually the best way to present the work and get people to actually buy into it and understand it.
Yeah, the more words you have, the harder sometimes it is, because people don't read. Like when I'm on a committee, it's like I'll read the first sentence and like see exactly where this is going to go, because I really just want to get to the gist of it, because there's literally 100 other applicants that I have to read through. So a lot of times just being short and sweet is the goal, and really just giving those visuals with bullet points, I think, is sometimes best. It's 1 or 2 paragraphs that are just well thought out, I think sometimes can really be 10 times better than 10 paragraphs explaining everything.
Right. Maybe time for a couple more questions here. I think this would be a quick one. Someone asks, Detour, are you still looking for luggage donations?
Yes. So in January, I will have a public hearing or something like that with the city and DIA on like a Zoom. And I'm basically presenting the idea to people that want to sort of join. And basically I'll have a form at the end that I'll share with everyone about where they can go to that form and submit their piece of luggage, so that it's streamlined into a database to where I can look at all the different submissions and say, hey, this would be great for it. This would be great for it. This, is difficult for the piece or for the project. So yeah, I will definitely have a way of people submitting luggage to it, because I'm looking for all different stories, because a part of the public art project, basically, there's going to be a companion website to where you're able to see the luggage on the actual website, see it on the actual piece, and sort of I'll have a story or a description that you guys submit a part of that piece of luggage. So you'll have the ability to tell your story through this art piece as well. So I'll have all that on my website, but I'll definitely share it when I do, and then it'll be at that public forum next year in January. Yeah, so it's at the end of the year. I keep forgetting that.
All right. Probably stay tuned to Detour's social media, and we'll share the details in a bit. Let's go out with this question. Last one. I'll probably go into Detour here. How do you evolve and grow as an artist?
Well, really, I mean, for me, it has always been getting outside your comfort zone and exploring things you haven't done before. So for me, I started out doing airbrushing, and I was really big in like, the pop art stuff as a kid. And really just like growing from that was me traveling a lot, linking a lot with my fellow artists and exploring different mediums. And that really helps out a lot when it comes to expanding your ideas and the way you can execute and express yourself, because artists are creative problem solvers. And when you have a small tool belt and you only have a hammer, you're going to try to solve a problem with just a hammer. But when you're gaining different skill sets, you're gaining different ways of tackling a creative problem, then you get into the idea of, oh, I have a hammer, I have a shield, I have this, I have that, I have everything, and I can tackle a problem creatively and sort of get outside the box. So that's basically what I always tell artists, is to figure out different ways of gaining new skill sets and getting new perspectives, traveling as much as you can, doing as much research when it comes to art history, and getting into different things as much as possible, but really just getting outside of your comfort zone when it comes to being an artist. And just like I said at the beginning, just go for it, try out new ideas, try out new like residencies, try to apply for different grants, try to apply for all these different things, because sometimes you just never know who's on the committee, who's going to get it. You're going to end up getting something, and then you're going to end up growing from that experience. So that's basically how my career has been, and how a lot of artists around me career has been when it comes to trying to grow as an artist, is really just like diving into a little bit of everything and growing from that. So like me, it's like I have a ton of friends that will do all sorts of different mediums, and I'll ask them about stuff. I'll team up with them, I'll collaborate with them on different items, and that's how I grow as an artist. And you do that every day constantly, you're going to see yourself from year to year get better at creative problem solving, and your skills just grow. Like I said, I learned Blender just for that application process, that RFP, and now it's like I'm trying to solve problems now using Blender and using 3D modeling, and now I'm using CAD design and 3D printing, which I didn't use 2 years ago. So really, it's all about just like exploring new things.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all your questions. There were so many great ones, and I know so many good ones that we couldn't get to. So apologies if we didn't get to your question. I have a direct line to both Thomas and Molly. I'm gonna see if we can impose on them to offline answer some of these questions and get back to you. Maybe on the Dotfolio site, maybe elsewhere. But thanks again for that. And as we start to close, I'll remind you about a couple of great resources. One is Thomas's book, Be the Artist, the Interactive Guide to a Lasting Art Career. Check it out on his website. We'll have some links. Yep, it's already in there for you if you want to grab those links before we close up. And then, of course, if you haven't created your portfolio yet, on dotfolioart.com, check it out. Go over there. Those links are there for you, as well as the Instagram channels. So thanks a lot for joining us. And Thomas and Molly, thank you so much for your time today. I know our attendees got a lot from this, and I just appreciate it so much.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of the questions right now that were coming in. I saw one that was about standing out from RFQs, and I think I just want to answer that question. That's really like, for me, it's like partnering with people. So like a lot of times your RFQ is like who you are, but like when you partner with people and collaborate, people see that, oh, you're with this artist team and this fabricator, and that really helps out pushing your application across the table into the shortlist versus, oh, this artist is working alone and I don't know too much about them, especially if you're just getting new to that space. So like partnering with people in collaboration. So I just saw that in the question box, and I was like, I really want to answer that one. But yeah, thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Detour.
All right, we'll hope to do this again, maybe in 2023. So stay tuned for emails about anything like this. But for now, here's thanking you again for attending and wishing you some happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye.